Good morning, everyone. This is J-Lo. Hi, Taylor. This one is for you. Hi, good morning. I'm Isabel O'Connor. I'm your Vice President of Instruction. And as you are having this nice retreat, I'm actually working on moving my family to our new home in Escondido. So I'm really sorry I can't be there, but I look forward to being there next year and many more to come. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to tell you a little bit about my origins story so we get to know each other a little better. As you know, I am from Spain, and this is where it starts, right? So I'm from Spain. I grew up in a very small village up in the mountains in southeastern Spain, where the population was 1,200 in the 60s when I was growing up, and right now, on a good day, is 700. So it's a dying little village. And my childhood was a happy one, sort of wild. I remember going to steal cherries with friends out in the fields because that was our playground. But grew up in a very poor family. From a long time, my family has been poor. My grandfather, for example, on my mother's side, my mother was born in Algeria in North Africa. So my grandfather was a migrant farm worker who moved to Algeria and was known by French colonial authorities as a pied noir or black feet, because he was working in the fields and he was always dirty. So, my mother and my father grew up in Spain right after the Civil War, so it was really tough time. Spanish Civil War was 1936 to 1939, and it was followed by a fascist dictatorship. So, as you hear in my story, you'll hear several terms that repeat themselves. One is poverty, and the other one is really growing up in a dictatorship in a poor family in a little village. I never had to do a lot of mental work to figure out where my family and I fit into the social scheme. It was all predetermined. We knew we were at the very bottom, and we always knew that good things happen to others. You're not entitled to anything. Let me tell you a couple of stories of that growing up. I never had a Barbie doll. And, right later on, I thought, oh, what a great thing. I never had a Barbie doll. But other people did. And for La Fiesta de los Reyes Magos, which is in January, the Feast of the Magi, we don't have Santa Claus in Spain. My mother would buy detergent, collect points, and then get toys that were like several seasons old. So my dolls didn't look like Barbie, they were a bit older, and other people did. So I never had people coming to my house and say, "Oh, I want to see the toys that the three magi gave you," because, well, they were not memorable, but they were really good toys as it turned out. The other thing about poverty is, um, we my father did all sorts of jobs. He worked in the field. He was a traveling salesman. He eventually worked in a textile factory, which there were several of those in my town. And we never had enough money to pay for anything. I remember one time we were at home, not one, but several times. And the man who came to collect the payment for the electricity every month, my mother would say, "Quick, close the door, turn off the lights, we'll pretend we're not home, so that way he'll go away and we would buy ourselves like a week of extra time to hopefully put the money back together." I also remember hunger very, very clearly. I remember my father would plant, tomato plants and things of that nature. And that is what the family would have for dinner: some bread, some tomato with olive oil, and then you go to bed hungry. And I remember those feelings that it wasn't, in addition to knowing where you stood in the social scheme, it was also a feeling of despair, but also of blame. Why am I in this situation? It's because, well, this is where you have been placed and this is what you deserve and nothing more. So, how did it all change from growing up in those under those circumstances to coming to Mesa? Well, there's the next leg of the journey. The next leg of the journey is also really special to me. It starts when I was in eighth grade in this little village, And my teacher, I remember his name, Don Fernando Jover. He said to my mother, not my father, "Oh, I think Isabel is kind of smart. There might be something there that is workable, and she should go to high school." And it wasn't automatic that I was going to go to high school. He had to convince my mother, not my father, that I should go to high school and not go to a factory of the many that were there in existence at the time to work. My mother, of course, saw the dollars and cents, or the pesetas back then, and realized that by me going to high school, she was losing income for the family. But eventually she agreed, and I'll never forget what she told me. She told me, "You're going to go to high school, two conditions, no boyfriends, and if you fail a subject, you're going to be automatically out." I didn't fail a subject because there's nothing more in this world that I love than learning. And I'm not going to comment on the boyfriend part, but I got through. Anyway, I also remember distinctly, sometimes we associate smells with memories. I remember getting a bag for my new high school books. It was Provençal yellow and blue, my favorite colors. And I put the new books that we bought in there. The smell of the new books meant to me sort of like the opening of the future. I don't think I put it that poetically back then, but it meant that I could go to high school and pursue an education. And then when I was through high school and I did really well, then it came time to decide, so what am I going to do after high school? Am I going to go to college? And again, in my family, nobody had graduated even from an elementary school degree. So when it was time to go to college, time to decide, I kept filling out the papers. I wanted to study Arabic because of the North African connection through my mom, and because of the presence of Islam in Spanish history. And that was a 5-year degree. And I always knew that I wanted to teach and be engaged in education. So should it be going to study Islamic studies in Arabic, or should it be studying education, elementary education, which was 3 years? Well, given my financial situation, the 3 years won, and I'm very happy I did. I love being an elementary school teacher. But let me tell you about something that happened then. When I was in college, my father lost his job at the factory. He was close to 60, no opportunity to find steady work. I was getting some grants from the Spanish government. They're not as generous there. And the grants were really not to pay for my education, but for my family to put food on the table. So it was really tough. And as I reflect on the past, I keep thinking that there were several momentum points on that life journey that I almost didn't make it, right? That it could have gone the other way. And then somehow I kept going. I think a word resonates in my head, and that's resilience, and sometimes luck, and sometimes also stubbornness, which I think I have a touch of just a little bit. So I managed to finish college, barely. I did tutoring, anything I could do to help my family and to help pay for my college degree. And then I moved to the United States. Because I met a guy, un americano, right? His name is Lee, and we got married in 1986. So get a hold of this. Right before I got married, I didn't speak English because, why would I learn English? I knew a lot of French already in my family, so I took the easy language, right? I was really good in French. And that is the professor who told me as my advisor that I should be a flight attendant because I spoke French really well. But now I needed to learn English. So I was in this little village, and I took private classes from a woman in my village who had spent like about a year in Scotland. So munch on this, right? The Spanish lady with a heavy Spanish accent who had studied for 1 year in Scotland. So I managed to learn a few words, and then I came to the United States. So that was August 1986, August 31st, 1986. I remember landing at LAX and seeing the picture of Ronald Reagan. Okay, all right, let's move on. So I had to learn English. And here again is one of those golden moments. It was at Los Angeles City College that I learned English. And that really opened the door for me. And let me tell you a funny story. So when I first came in, English, my husband had lots of friends and they all wanted to meet me. Oh, here's his wife from Spain. Okay, so we're going to speak Spanish, right? And it never went beyond cerveza, right? So I would be sitting in this conversation and it all seemed like a really long word. I mean, one sentence would seem to me, because I didn't speak English, just one really long word, and I'd be just looking like a tennis match, one side to the other. So eventually I learned English and I learned it pretty quickly. But my funny story goes back to the assessment the test. So my husband took me to LACC, Los Angeles City College, to take the assessment. Okay, so I don't speak any English. I don't understand a single thing they're telling me. He sits right next to me and tells the guy who's doing the placement, I'm not going to tell her the answers. She just doesn't know anything. Put her in level like 0, right? So the guy said, no, my husband would say, you need to raise your hand now, or you need to go to this room and take a test. So I take the test and I come up like, 2 levels below transfer or something really high. My husband is arguing with the guy. No, she doesn't know anything. Put her in level 0. So, eventually, that is that feeling of powerlessness, right? Where I couldn't argue, or not argue, but I couldn't really express anything. I had to rely on others. So I took those classes, and by March of 1987, so 6 months later, the funny part is that I got a job as a bilingual, a bilingual teaching assistant at Los Angeles Unified School District. Since it was late in the year, they put me in a 4th grade class where there were a lot of English language learners just like yours truly. So the night before, I would take home the sheets that the students were going to be working on the next day. So I'd review the English and, at least have my husband help me somehow with my pronunciation of the words so the kids would understand me. And then I continued taking classes at Los Angeles City College. By 1988, I moved to Loyola Marymount. I had to take additional courses because my Spanish university college degree was not the equivalent, or so they told me, to an American degree. So anyway, I finished my American bachelor's at Loyola Marymount, and by 1990, I managed to realize my dream to study history, medieval history. And why medieval history? Remember my interest in Islamic studies. It's because that's a golden part of Spanish history. And it's also because I'm Catalan. So Spanish is not my native language. In fact, when I was growing up, under that dictatorship, anybody who spoke Catalan in public could be put in jail because it was a forbidden language. I couldn't study Catalan until I went to college in Spain. So when I was at UCLA, that's where I did my PhD, my interest was one of self-discovery. Let's look at medieval Spanish history. Let's look at how my people, the people with Catalan last names who never figured out in any Spanish history book, was always, people with Spanish names, long names, all these people who were doing everything, and the rest of us who had the wrong last names were never there. So my journey of exploring my PhD moved from looking at the Christian conquerors, the ones who are Catalan like me, to the Muslim population of Spain that was conquered. And again, looking at how Muslim communities in the 13th century, the 1200s, after they were conquered by Christians, managed to reorganize themselves and create a life that respected that identity. And that was a dream come true, and it still is to me, that I was able to go to Barcelona, which is my favorite city in the entire world because I'm Catalan, staunch Catalan independence. That's my flag over there. So I was able to do my research there, to spend time in the archives, to touch medieval paper manufactured by Muslims in the 13th century. And it that part to me feels like a dream because I never thought I would do anything like that. Nor was it in my plans or anybody's plans for me or people like me. And then after that, I got a tenure track job at in Indiana, where I taught for 11 years. I was tenured faculty member and department chair. And it was being department chair what propelled me into being an administrator. It was in 2006 where my dean at the time, I wasn't even tenured, he told me, well, I think you should be department chair. I don't want the other candidates. I want you to be department chair. And I said, okay, fine. And he said, what are going to be your goals for the department? And I said, yeah, I'll get them to you next week. It's like, what do I know, right? So it was being department chair that really allowed me an opportunity to have, begin to explore what does leadership look like and how does it fit with me. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned from the beginning in terms of leadership that I applied as department chair or dean at Cabrillo College, or now I have the pleasure to be your vice president of instruction, is to really, how do you lead others? How do you allow them to grow? That you don't have to do everything. What you have to do is to create to give people the tools and create the atmosphere that really allows them to develop themselves and to pursue our goals, to work with you, our students, to make Mesa or Cabrillo or Indiana University South Bend the best place that we can do to serve you. So that has been my journey. Every day I reflect back again and I look at, wow, I got here. I look back also, and I want to add one more thing. There's a little bit of guilt because when you come from from the circumstances from which I came, I managed to move in a different direction, but my family in Spain is still struggling with poverty, unemployment, domestic violence. And it makes me feel a little bit guilty that I built a different life for myself. And why did I build a different life for myself? I mean, I don't know. It was resilience, it was stubbornness, it was also coming to the United States. No country in the world is perfect, but this country certainly offered me possibilities that I never would have had in Spain. So for that, I am thankful. But I mean, I am even more thankful to be working with the rest of cabinet, with the rest of Mesa College, and with all of you, the fabulous students that we have. What you bring, and you're the reason that we are here. Beyond words, it's reality. So come see me. My door is always open, and I hope to be here in person next year. So this is goodbye from JLo, otherwise known as Isabel. Bye.